Before we dive in, viewer discretion is advised. This content is presented purely for entertainment. What happens when a titan of Hollywood, a man synonymous with cinematic greatness, sits down for what should be a routine interview, only to find himself ambushed by a host intent on igniting a personal war on live television? Brace yourself, because what followed became one of the most volatile moments in modern broadcast history. A legendary figure, Al Pacino, was pushed into a fiery exchange that ultimately led to him abandoning the set mid-interview. But before we pull back the curtain on this shocking confrontation, make sure to join our community by hitting that subscribe button and sharing your thoughts below. What do you think about celebrity interviews gone wrong? This is one story you truly have to see to believe, because the drama that unfolds is nothing short of staggering. Asterisk, what was meant to be a standard promotional appearance on The View for Al Pacino, the iconic actor behind The Godfather, Scarface, and countless cinematic masterpieces, quickly became something far more intense. He was there to discuss his latest film. Now in his 80s, Pacino remains a figure defined by passionate performances and unwavering professionalism. Over decades, he has navigated thousands of interviews with effortless ease, shifting smoothly between deep cinematic discussion and lighthearted talk show banter. But on this particular morning, something felt off from the moment he stepped onto the stage. Asterisk, the usual pre-show pleasantries felt hollow. Beneath the surface, an undercurrent of tension and invisible friction hung in the air, instantly putting the seasoned actor on alert. Joy Behar, co-host of The View and well-known for her biting wit and political jabs, had clearly decided this interview would be anything but routine. Her agenda became apparent almost immediately. Leaning in with a smile that felt more predatory than pleasant, she began. "So Al, let's talk about your new film. But before that, I need to ask about your past. Looking back, do you have any regrets about glorifying violence in films like Scarface? Shouldn't Hollywood bear some responsibility for its influence on society?" Asterisk, Pacino, visibly blindsided by the aggressive opening, paused. His eyes narrowed ever so slightly, a familiar signal of restrained intensity for anyone who knew his work. "Well, Joy," he replied calmly, his voice steady but edged with steel. "That's a rather heavily weighted question to start with. I've always believed cinema is an exploration of the human condition, darkness included. We're storytellers, not moral guardians." Asterisk, Joy wasted no time cutting him off. "But you must see how these portrayals affect young, impressionable minds," she shot back. "Think of how many kids wanted to be Tony Montana. Don't you feel even a sliver of accountability for that?" An uncomfortable silence rippled across the panel. Uneasy glances between the other hosts made it clear this was not the interview anyone had expected, especially not so early on. Asterisk, Whoopi Goldberg attempted to diffuse the tension by shifting the conversation toward Pacino's acting process. But Joy immediately shut it down. No, let him answer," she insisted, waving her hand dismissively. "This matters. You've made millions playing violent roles. Don't you think the public deserves an explanation?" Pacino's jaw tightened. "I owe the public nothing but an honest performance," he said firmly, the legendary fire in his voice now unmistakable. "Every role I've played was approached with respect and dedication. If you want a sincere philosophical discussion about art and its impact on society, I'm open to that. But let's not pretend that's what this is." Asterisk, what do you mean by that? Joy shot back, her voice rising. Pacino leaned forward slightly, his tone turning sharp and direct. "I mean, you seem far more interested in manufacturing conflict than having a real conversation. I've been in this industry for over 50 years. I know the difference between an interview and an inquisition." Asterisk, the tension in the studio had become a tangible, suffocating force. Camera operators shifted uneasily behind their equipment, and the other hosts sat frozen in their seats, looking as though they wished the floor might open up and swallow them whole. Joy Behar, however, was only getting started. Scoffing, she let out a laugh that carried no warmth at all. "Oh, so now I'm interrogating you," she said sharply. "I'm asking valid questions about your career. And if you're too fragile to handle them, maybe this business isn't for you anymore." A crushing silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of studio electronics. Al Pacino held her gaze for a long, heavy moment, and in that stillness, it was clear to everyone that the ground had just shifted. This was no longer an awkward interview. It was on the verge of becoming a defining moment. "Listen," Pacino finally said, his voice low but resonant with the authority of an entire career. "I've been answering questions about my work since before you ever had a job in television. But there's a massive difference between asking a question and showing outright disrespect." Joy's face flushed a deep crimson. "Disrespect?" she snapped. "For asking about the real-world impact of your films? That's my job." "Al, maybe inside your insulated Hollywood bubble, you're surrounded by people telling you how brilliant you are. But out here, in the real world, we ask the hard questions." Pacino's eyebrows rose in disbelief. "You think sitting behind this table makes you more connected to the real world than an artist who spent 50 years chronicling real lives, real pain, and real human experience?" Joy fired back without hesitation. "It makes me someone who isn't afraid to challenge Hollywood when it's necessary. Frankly, I see a lot that's deeply problematic about the films you've built your name on." The other hosts scrambled to regain control, with one of them attempting to jump in and steer the conversation toward his upcoming projects. But Joy cut her off with a brutal gesture. "No, we're finishing this," she commanded. "I'm not done, Al. You've been dodging my questions." Pacino's expression hardened. "I've evaded nothing," he replied. "I've answered every question you've asked. The problem is that my answers aren't the ones you already scripted in your head." That's because your answers are polished Hollywood spin," Joy shot back. Then she leaned in, her voice turning colder, more pointed. "So let me be direct. How do you sleep at night knowing that your romanticized portrayals of criminals and gangsters may have inspired real-world violence? How many lives have been lost because someone thought being Tony Montana was cool?" The accusation landed like a detonation. Even for a show known for heated exchanges, this crossed a line. Whoopi Goldberg looked openly appalled, and in the control booth, producers were reportedly scrambling in alarm. Pacino leaned back, his body taut with contained rage. "That is not just unfair, Joy," he said slowly. "That is profoundly irresponsible. You're essentially holding me accountable for acts of violence I have absolutely no connection to. That isn't journalism, it's a public attempt to tear down my reputation. Oh, so now I'm destroying your character." Joy laughed, the sound sharp as ice. "I'm asking you to take responsibility for the shadow your work has cast. But I suppose that's too much to expect from someone who's spent decades sealed up in an ivory tower." Ivory tower. For the first time, Pacino's voice cracked like a whip, revealing a flash of the legendary temper beneath. "I was raised in the Bronx. I've seen real struggle, real violence, real consequences. None of it has ever been entertainment to me or something I celebrate. Every character I've played faced a reckoning. Every story carried weight. If you can't see that, then you don't understand what you're even talking about." Joy jabbed a finger in his direction. "Don't you dare lecture me about understanding," she snapped. "I've been on the front lines of real-world events while you've been playing make-believe for a paycheck. I know what real consequences look like, and I know films like yours feed into them." By now, the other hosts were in a silent panic, desperately trying to regain control of the spiraling exchange. Another attempt was made to pivot toward his craft, but once again, Joy cut it off. "This is a vital conversation," she declared, her gaze fixed on Pacino like a predator. This is the reckoning Hollywood elites need to face those who believe they're beyond reproach. Beyond reproach. Pacino replied, his voice now a low, dangerous hum. I've faced scrutiny my entire life and grown from it. But there's an entire universe between honest critique and what you're doing here. You came onto this set with a verdict already decided, and you have no interest in anything I say. Asterisk, my only goal is holding powerful men accountable. Joy proclaimed, delivering her words like a courtroom closing argument rather than part of a conversation. A concept that seems entirely foreign to your world. My world. Pacino leaned forward, knuckles white as he gripped the arms of his chair. You know nothing about my world. You know nothing about the years of struggle, the devotion to the craft, the respect I have for this art and the people who watch it. You decided who I was before I ever opened my mouth. I decided based on 50 years of your films. Joy snapped back, her words like bullets. And what I see is a man who made a fortune romanticizing everything fractured about masculinity in this country. A chilling silence swallowed the studio. The faint clicking of cameras echoed as crew members stood frozen, witnessing what felt like the on-air dismantling of a living legend. Pacino slowly shook his head, and when he finally spoke again, his voice was a low growl, simmering with barely restrained fury. You know, Joy, he said, in all my years in this industry, I've encountered every type of person, the good, the bad, and those just trying to get by. Asterisk Pacino continued, his voice steady but edged with a hard-earned bitterness, saying that in all his years he had rarely encountered someone so consumed by the need to dismantle another human being simply to elevate their own sense of importance. Joy bristled at once, a slight tremor cracking her voice before she masked it with defiance. She insisted this had nothing to do with her ego and everything to do with accountability, a concept she claimed his generation fundamentally failed to understand. That word generation lit a fire in Pacino's eyes. He shot back that his generation had forged the very industry that gave her this platform, that they told the stories, took the risks, and carved the path for everyone who followed. And yet, she now stood there lecturing him about accountability. Joy, unyielding, lifted her chin and said plainly that yes, she would lecture him, because someone had to ask the hard questions others in Hollywood were too starstruck to even form. Asterisk Pacino let out a short, hollow laugh, devoid of humor. He told her that what she was calling challenging questions was nothing more than an ambush built on baseless accusations, absurdly suggesting he was responsible for society's crimes. That, he said, was not journalism was cruelty disguised as virtue. Alyssa Farrah Griffin tried to intervene, attempting to redirect the conversation by mentioning Pacino's charity work. But Joy snapped at her co-host and refused to let the subject change. She demanded to know why Pacino believed he was exempt from discussions about the cultural impact of violent media. His voice rose again as he pushed back, saying he did not want exemption at all. What he wanted was an honest dialogue, something she had clearly discarded the moment she decided he was already guilty. No matter what truth he offered, he said, it would never pierce her pre-written judgment. Asterisk Joy doubled down, pressing her attack by calling him a symbol of everything rotten at Hollywood's core old guard. The glorification of aggression, toxic masculinity, all wrapped in applause and golden statues. Pacino locked eyes with her, holding the silence so long the entire studio felt it. Something shifted inside him. The rage drained from his face, replaced by something far colder and far sadder pity. When he finally spoke, his voice was unnervingly calm. He said he had come to the show to talk about his work, to share it with audiences, maybe even to enjoy the experience. He had endured thousands of interviews and always maintained respect, even under sharp questioning. But this, he said, was no longer an interview. Joy smirked, convinced she had him cornered, calling it a perfect example of entitlement, the kind of behavior she claimed to be exposing. Asterisk. Pacino's expression then changed into something none of the hosts had ever witnessed. It was not anger, but a deep, aching disappointment. He repeated the word entitled as if it tasted poisonous, then asked Joy to listen carefully. He told her he had poured his entire existence into his craft, dissected every character, lived inside their struggles, and delivered truth in every role he had ever played. He had never asked for special treatment, never demanded easy questions, and never avoided difficult conversations. What she was doing now, however, was not journalism made, was public harassment. Joy scoffed, incredulous, calling that claim the very definition of Hollywood privilege. She accused him of crying foul the moment he was asked a real question. Pacino's voice dropped lower, and the tension in the room spiked. He told her that if she wanted a real question, he would show her what one sounded like. She could have asked about his methods, the moral tightrope of portraying deeply flawed men, the responsibility he felt as an artist, or how his understanding had evolved over decades. Instead, she had chosen a personal crusade pinning society's demons onto his chest for reasons that had nothing to do with him. The hosts exchanged panicked looks as Whoopi Goldberg made one final attempt to steer the conversation back to safer ground by suggesting they discuss his new project. Joy shut it down instantly, demanding a yes or no answer. Did he believe his films, steeped in conflict, had left a negative mark on culture? Pacino slowly closed his eyes. When he opened them, they carried nothing but weary sorrow. He asked if she was certain she wanted the answer. Joy said yes, triumph flashing in her eyes. Pacino answered that true art held a mirror to society, and sometimes that reflection showed things people preferred not to face. The men he portrayed were not heroes, he explained. They were warnings. Tony Montana did not find fulfillment. He died alone and ruined. Michael Corleone did not achieve peace. He was left with crushing emptiness. These were not glamorous endings. They were tragedies. Joy cut in, insisting people did not see them that way. Pacino acknowledged that some didn't, but said that was not the failure of art, it was the failure of those who chose to ignore its message. Should stories about hard realities stop being told because some misinterpret them? Should films only be about puppies and rainbows? Joy scoffed, calling the idea absurd. Pacino shot back that what was absurd was demanding he take responsibility for how strangers chose to interpret his work. That, he said, was like blaming Shakespeare for every dark act committed by someone who read Macbeth. Joy's face flushed with anger as she told him not to dare compare himself to Shakespeare, accusing him of exactly the arrogance she was condemning. Pacino countered immediately, his patience now razor-thin, insisting he was not comparing himself to Shakespeare at all but to the timeless principle that art reflects humanity. It does not command it. Pacino drew a sharp line, stating plainly that he was making a point about artistic responsibility one Joy had no interest in understanding, because her true objective was not dialogue, but attack. Joy shot back that what she wanted was honesty, something she claimed Hollywood was sorely lacking. The steel returned to Pacino's voice, sharper than ever. He told her she wanted honesty, and he would give it to her, without question. This had been the single most unprofessional interview he had ever experienced. He said he had been treated with more courtesy by paparazzi hiding in bushes than he had by her in that studio. Joy scoffed, dripping with mockery, sneering that the poor movie star wasn't being treated like royalty and welcoming him to the real world. That was the moment precise. Unmistakable when everyone in the studio knew a line had been crossed beyond repair. Pacino slowly rose from his chair, the deliberate movement draining every ounce of air from the room. His voice became chillingly calm, razor sharp. He reminded Joy that he had spent over 50 years in the industry, working alongside the greatest directors, actors, and writers across generations. He had faced criticism from people with real knowledge of the craft and had learned from every single one. But never not once had he been subjected to such profound disrespect from someone who called herself a professional. Joy attempted to interrupt, but Pacino raised his hand, stopping her cold. He told her she was finished speaking, that he had listened long enough, and now she would listen. He had come as an invited guest, with respect for the show and its audience, fully prepared to have an honest conversation about his work, life, and experiences. Instead, she had chosen to turn him into a public target for whatever unresolved grievances she carried against the entertainment industry. The studio fell into a grave-like silence. Even Joy appeared, momentarily stunned by the controlled fire in his voice. Pacino continued, his tone precise and unflinching, saying he didn't know what had happened in her life to fill her with such bitterness. And frankly, it was none of his concern. But he would not sit there and allow her to project it onto him. He had been professional throughout. She had been openly hostile. He was done. Joy finally found her voice again, accusing him of running away like every other Hollywood prima donna who couldn't handle criticism. Pacino smiled then, but it was a thin, icy smile with no warmth behind it. He told her he had welcomed criticism from the sharpest minds in the world because it made him better. What she was doing, however, was not criticism, it was cruelty. And life, he said, was far too short to waste on cruel people. As he unclipped his microphone. Panic rippled through the production crew. Whoopi Goldberg pleaded with him not to leave, asking for a reset. Pacino turned to her, his expression softening with genuine respect. He told her she was a class act, always had been, but he could not continue, and he would not continue. Joy, sensing too late the magnitude of her mistake, made one final, desperate attempt to reclaim control, telling him to go ahead and leave and show the world who he really was. Pacino paused, microphone in hand, and locked eyes with her one last time. He told her exactly what he was made of. 50 years of relentless work, unwavering dedication, and deep respect for his craft and his colleagues. He was made of thousands of hours of study, preparation, and giving every piece of himself to every role. He was made of a genuine love for storytelling and for the people who watched his films. And above all, he was made of enough self-respect to know when to walk away from someone who did not deserve another second of his time. With that, he handed the microphone to a stunned production assistant and turned toward the exit. Joy's voice rang out in desperation, reminding him that this was live television and insisting he couldn't just leave. Pacino stopped at the edge of the set and glanced back one final time. "Watch me," he said. And with those two words, one of the most revered actors in Hollywood history walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a shell-shocked audience, mortified co-hosts, and a furiously red-faced Joy Behar. The cameras kept rolling as the hosts scrambled to fill the void. But nothing could erase what the world had just witnessed, a masterclass in dignity, under fire, and a powerful reminder that respect is not demanded. It is earned. What's your verdict on this explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen a celebrity interview implode so spectacularly? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories like this one.